Good evening, I'm David Kramer with Alaska Weather. As always, please visit our website, weather.gov/Alaska. You can get any updates to the forecast or check out any watches, warnings, or advisories that we might have out for your area. You can also call our weather info line, 1-800-472-0391. Get any updates to the forecast through that means as well. And you can email me at the address at the bottom of the screen, david.kramer@noaa.gov. Taking a look now at the warnings that we do have out, all of these are red flag warnings, meaning that there's increased risk of wildfire danger in these areas all throughout the central and eastern portions of the interior. And all of these red flag warnings are out until 10 p.m. this evening. So if you're recreating in the area, please be mindful that there is increased risk for wildfires. Taking a look now at our fire danger, you can see that area where we do have those red flag warnings out in the central and eastern portions of the interior, especially as we get up by the Yukon Flats area. We do have that extreme fire danger out. Then we do also have some areas along the Seward Peninsula and up in the northern portions of the Kotzebue Sound area where we do have some high danger as well. And then down in the Kenai Peninsula and the Susitna Valley, also some areas where we do have higher fire danger. Moving into our satellite imagery, we'll start off with a low pressure system south of the Gulf of Alaska, bringing some cloud cover closer towards the Alaska Peninsula or Panhandle as we move throughout time. We can see some remaining cloud cover over the area of the Panhandle as well. And then out through much of the interior, as we watch this loop again, we can see a lot of the shower activity developing, pushing out towards a lot of the eastern locations of the state. And then some of that convection happening in the interior where we are expecting some of those thunderstorms to develop this afternoon and into the evening hours. And then finally, we can look out over the eastern portions of the Bering Sea, where we do have some additional lower cloud cover out over the Pribilof Islands, down by the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. Taking a look now at our weather for the remainder of the day, high pressure nosing in over the western portions of the Bering Sea and Aleutians. That is keeping much of the precipitation further off to the east, but also allowing for some of that lower cloud cover to be in effect for much of the Bering and Aleutian Islands. We do have some rain extending from the eastern Aleutians to the Alaska Peninsula, and then showers for much of the southern portion of the mainland. As we get further up into the YK Delta and much of the interior, we are expecting those isolated areas of thunderstorms throughout the afternoon and evening hours. And then as we push down into the very southeastern portions of the state to the Panhandle area, we are expecting some rain to continue from low pressure over the area. As we move into tonight, a lot of that rain over the Panhandle is going to clear up and push off to the east. We'll have some lingering showers over the southeastern portions of the Panhandle. Some showers also out over the eastern portions of south central Alaska, going to linger through the night, but much of the thunderstorm activity is going to dwindle down as we get later into the evening, especially as we get into the early hours of tonight. As we look out over the west coast of the state, we are going to see some showers in the Kotzebue Sound area, down into the Norton Sound area as well, and some showers down by the Kuskokwim Delta area, and some more rain throughout much of the Bering Sea and the Aleutian Islands to include the Alaska Peninsula. As we move into Monday, lingering showers out over the Bering and Aleutians are going to continue. Going to have continued rain for the Alaska Peninsula as well. And then another system pushing up towards the Alaska Peninsula from the North Pacific, bringing more rain towards the area. High pressure dominating out over much of the Gulf of Alaska, keeping some rain out over the Panhandle area. We are going to see continued rain throughout Monday. And we are going to have more shower development over much of mainland Alaska. That's going to intensify as we get into the afternoon and evening hours again, where we will expect to see some thunderstorms in the interior down into the YK Delta and some of the Alaska Range as well. As we move into Tuesday, we're going to continue to see that afternoon thunderstorm development for the western locations of the interior down into the YK Delta area as well. Some showers for much of the southeastern portions of mainland Alaska to include south central Alaska, and then down through much of the North Gulf coastline into areas of the Panhandle. However, we do have some of that ridging pushing in that's going to keep some of the areas in the southwestern portion of the Panhandle a little bit drier, as northern locations are going to see much of the rain. Frontal system coming in behind this ridging is going to push into Kodiak Island area and the Alaska Peninsula, bringing rain to both of these locations. We're going to have some lightening of the showers out over the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, just some lingering light showers out over those locations, and high pressure continuing to dominate the western Aleutian Islands. Taking a look now at our temperatures, starting off Monday morning, we'll stay out over the Aleutians for now, down into the lower 40s for many of the islands, into the mid 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, 45 for Iliamna, King Salmon, and Dillingham. And as we move up into the YK Delta and southwestern portions of the state, get into the upper 40s with some locations like Aniak getting up to 50 degrees. As we push further into the interior, going to be right around 50 degrees, and up the west coast of the state in those upper 40s through the Norton Sound area. Kotzebue Sound area, a little bit colder there. Some locations down around 30 degrees, but others like Kotzebue up around 40 degrees for those morning lows. And then as we get along the Arctic coastline, western locations are going to stay warmer, 38 degrees, but dropping right around freezing for much of the Arctic coastline from Utqiagvik further to the east. Down into the interior portions of the state, temperatures dropping down to around the mid to lower 50s. Some locations up by the Fort Yukon area only getting down to 56 degrees. And then down in south central Alaska, temperatures dropping down into the mid 40s. Valdez staying a little bit warmer, only getting down to 2 degrees for Monday morning. As we look down in the Panhandle area, we are going to have temperatures drop down to the mid 40s. Some locations like Sitka going to stay a little bit warmer, dropping down to 49 degrees. As we move into Monday afternoon, we are going to see temperatures rise back up to around 60 degrees for much of the Panhandle. Closer towards the Gulf of Alaska, a little bit warmer. Yakutat and Sitka both only getting up to 54 degrees. As we move into south central Alaska along the water's edge, we are going to see temperatures right around 60 degrees. But as we get into the interior locations, expecting temperatures to rise into the lower 70s. Throughout much of the interior portion of the state, we are going to see temperatures get up into the 70s as well, with Fort Yukon getting up to the highest at 83 degrees expected high Monday afternoon. So look up along the Arctic coastline, going to see temperatures getting up into the 40s for the most part. Kaktovik staying a little bit colder, only getting up to 38 degrees Monday afternoon. Then for the west coast of the state, further up to the north in the 40s, but as we get towards the Norton Sound area, getting up into the 60s. Gamble staying a little bit colder, only getting up to 45 degrees. And then down in southwestern portions of the state, in the 60s for interior locations, in the 50s as we get by the water's edge. Down in the Alaska Peninsula, we are going to see temperatures getting up into the 50s, but in the Aleutian Islands, only getting up into the mid 40s. And for St. Paul, getting up to around 50 degrees. Tuesday morning lows dropping down to the lower 40s for much of the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, mid 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, and for southwest Alaska around the Bristol Bay area, around 50 degrees for areas around the YK Delta area, mid 40s for the Norton Sound area, and into the 30s for the Kotzebue Sound area, with 30s all along the Arctic coastline. Staying pretty warm in the interior portions of the state, staying in the 50s for those morning lows on Tuesday, and then into the 40s for much of south central Alaska, and mid 40s for much of the Panhandle as well. As we get into Tuesday afternoon, temperatures rising to get to the upper 50s for much of the Panhandle. However, some areas in Juneau and Haines going to get up into the 60s. 60s for much of south central Alaska. Again, a little bit warmer as we get to the more interior locations, and that's going to be true in the interior portion of the state as well, getting up into the 70s for the interior. 83 degrees expected high for Fort Yukon, again, one of the highest in the state. And then up along the Arctic coastline, right around 40 degrees. In the 40s for the Kotzebue Sound area, 60 degrees for the Norton Sound area, 50s to 60s for southwest Alaska, and in the mid 40s for the Aleutian Islands, with the Alaska Peninsula getting up to the 50s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
For aviation, we'll start off with a look at our flying weather for Monday morning. We're looking out over the Panhandle area. VFR conditions are expected. However, out over the Gulf, we are expecting IFR conditions that are going to extend in over southeastern portions of south central Alaska, with some MVFR conditions for other areas of south central expected. Much of the interior will be VFR, however, some isolated areas of MVFR will be around, and then we'll have more MVFR and IFR through the Brooks Range and along the Arctic coastline. All down the west coast of the state, primarily MVFR conditions along the coastline, with IFR conditions out over the water. Down in the Bering and Aleutian Islands, expecting widespread IFR conditions. Moving into Monday afternoon, going to continue to see those IFR conditions for the Bering and Aleutians. Then along the west coast of the state, continuing to see the MVFR conditions, and MVFR and IFR along the Arctic coastline. Much of mainland Alaska away from the water is going to be VFR, but as we drop down over the Gulf of Alaska coastline, expecting that to be MVFR conditions. And then down in the Panhandle, we do have some MVFR and IFR conditions moving into the area Monday afternoon. Tuesday morning, the IFR conditions in the Panhandle are going to clear up, leaving MVFR conditions throughout all of the area. IFR and MVFR conditions throughout much of south central Alaska, and then through the interior, expecting primarily VFR conditions before we get along the north slope, where we are expecting a mix of MVFR and IFR conditions. Along the west coast of the state, primarily MVFR along the coastline, with IFR conditions further out over the water. Down in the Bering and Aleutians, continuing to see those IFR conditions. That's going to last into Tuesday afternoon as well, with those IFR conditions lingering for the Bering and Aleutian Islands. Continuing to see the MVFR conditions along the west coastline, and then we are going to have those IFR conditions just off over the water, and MVFR and IFR along the Arctic coastline. Much of the interior part of the state going to be VFR for Tuesday afternoon. Some isolated areas of MVFR for the western portions of the interior. And then down out over the southern areas of south central Alaska, MVFR conditions are expected, and MVFR conditions lingering for the Panhandle. As we look out over our passes, starting up north at AKwx Pass, IFR conditions improving to VFR in the afternoon. For our Adigan Pass, also starting off IFR and then improving to VFR conditions in the afternoon. Dropping down to Lake Clark and Merrill, MVFR conditions expected in the morning, improving to VFR. Rainy Pass, however, will be VFR throughout the day, as well as at Windy Pass. Isabel Pass should also be VFR throughout the day on Monday. And Mentasta will start off MVFR and then improve to VFR conditions in the afternoon. Tenita Pass will start off marginal, improving to VFR. However, out over the west entrance, we are expecting that to be primarily VFR throughout the entire day on Monday. For Portage, we are expecting MVFR conditions throughout the day, but just like up to the north, we are expecting that to be closer to VFR conditions out by the west entrance. However, through the pass and the eastern entrance should be MVFR throughout the day. For Chilkoot and White, starting off VFR, but then dropping down to IFR conditions as we move into the afternoon. For our freezing lines, we do have an area of lower freezing levels around the eastern and central Aleutians, around 4,000 feet there, picking back up to around 6,000 feet over southwest Alaska, and up to 8,000 feet over the interior and northern locations. Then down by the Panhandle area, expecting those 6,000 feet lines to return all along the North Gulf Coast and Panhandle. For our icing, staying down in the Panhandle area, we do have above 8,000 feet for southern locations. And then out over the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, we're going to see primarily above 5,000 feet. However, as we get by the Bristol Bay area, that's going to be up above 10,000 feet. For our jet stream, starting off over the eastern portions of the state, we have northeasterly flow out over the Panhandle around 80 knots, dropping down around 60 knots out of the south as we move up over the eastern portions of the state. Strongest portion of the jet wall to our south, 120 knots out of a westerly direction south of Kodiak Island. And we do have a southeasterly branch of the jet out over the Bristol Bay area, YK Delta, around 55 knots. And then a northwesterly component of the jet out over the western Aleutians, around 70 knots, getting up to as high as 90 knots as it exits out to the south. Dropping down to 9,000 feet, pretty weak flow over much of Alaska. Some areas of 20 to 25 knot winds around Bristol Bay area out of the southeast, around the eastern Aleutians out of a northeasterly direction. Primarily easterly flow over much of south central and interior portions of the state, around 20 knots, and then northerly flow 25 knots out over the Panhandle. Dropping down to 3,000 feet, again we have pretty weak flow out over the Panhandle area, primarily sub 20 knots, but as we get out over the Gulf, northwesterly winds around 20 knots there. Weak flow over mainland Alaska until we get up along the Arctic coastline where we have northeasterly flow, 25 knots there. And then some areas of 20 knots out over the Bering Sea and Aleutian Islands, with an area out by the western Aleutians out of a northerly direction, around 20 knots there. And then just to the north of the Pribilof Islands by St. Matthew Island out of a northwesterly direction, around 25 knots. For turbulence, we are expecting no significant turbulence for Monday.
Ahoy, Extra Cadets, and welcome to the Okeanos Explorer. I'm Debbie, and I'm an ocean explorer. I work for NOAA, which stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Together with many other people, I work on this ship and we explore the deep sea. How do we do that? Let's go find out.
Octonauts, let's do this. Yow!
The pressure in the ocean is so great humans can't go there, so we send a special robot. Octocadets, meet Deep Discoverer, our special robot for ocean exploration. And this is Chris. He works with Deep Discoverer. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Debbie.
Can you tell us about what Deep Discoverer does?
Sure. So this is Deep Discoverer, and today we're going to take Deep Discoverer up to 4 miles down to the ocean floor so you can see what Deep Discoverer sees.
And how do we do that?
We do that by using these powerful cameras and powerful lights.
That's neat. And what is that?
And this is our manipulator arm, and we use this arm to take biological and geological samples that we store up front in these boxes, and so that we can bring them to the surface so scientists can analyze them.
Wow, isn't that cool, Octocadets? Wow! Now that we know more about the special robot that explores the seafloor, let's find out more about the ship. Octocadets, let's do this. Now let's find out what we do with D2's video. Come along. This is the control room. A lot of things about D2 happen in here. Behind me you see the pilots. They steer D2 on the seafloor. And over here we have scientists. Hi, Steve and Stacy.
Hi, this is Steve and I'm Stacy and we are marine biologists.
Can you tell us about the work you do here?
We actually look at the videos collected by the robots and we try to identify organisms along with other scientists on the shore.
What are you looking at right now?
We're actually looking at a sea star.
That's so awesome, thank you. Now let's look at how we make maps of the seafloor.
Excellent, Quasi. A good map helps you to get to places you've never been.
We also have a scientist on board who makes maps of the seafloor. Hi, Derek.
Hi, Debbie.
Can you tell us about your work?
Sure. My job on the ship is to make maps of the ocean floor. We do this by sending sound from the bottom of the ship. It echoes off the seafloor and comes back to the ship. And then from that, we can make maps like this. So this is what it would look like if you were able to drain the water out of the ocean and actually see what the landscape looked like down there. We use these maps to give the vehicles a place to dive, and they explore further, just like Octonauts do.
Status report, Dashie.
We're right on course, Captain.
So earlier we learned that D2 picks things up from the seafloor with his manipulator arm. Let's find out what we do with those samples. This is the wet lab, and Megan spends a lot of time here. Megan, can you tell us about your work?
I am the sample data manager, so when the ROV comes up, we go out and we collect the samples from the ROV and we bring them in here. And we try to record as much information about them as possible, everything from the details about what they look like to the environment conditions where they were found. How cold was it, for example? Then we come in and we take imagery using this microscope, and we take pictures using this camera as well. And then after we get all the pictures taken and we're ready, we prepare them for shipping to other scientists and museums so more science can be done, such as the squat lobster, this cup coral as well.
And what is that?
This is a piece of coral, or several pieces of coral, that we think might actually be a new species. So we are going to send it out for a comparison to existing species to see if we discovered something new.
Wow, you have a really cool job.
Thank you.
Fascinating. I've read about this, but I've never actually seen it.
An important part of how we explore the ocean is keeping in touch with scientists and Octocadets on shore. Let's go see how we do that. Rosemary, could you tell the Octocadets a little about what that dish does?
Sure. My name is Lieutenant Rosemary Abbott. I'm the operations officer aboard the Okeanos Explorer, and that is our VSAT. It stands for Very Small Aperture Terminal, and inside that satellite dome is a very powerful dish antenna that allows us to communicate with shore and share video in real time. The technology is called telepresence.
Wow, that is so interesting. Thank you, Rosemary. Now I'm getting really hungry. Let's go to the kitchen and talk about food. This is the ship's kitchen, also known as the galley. And this is Michael. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Debbie.
Michael is the chief steward on this ship, and he keeps 49 people fed for 3 weeks at a time. Michael, how do you do that?
With a lot of care and with the help of 3 crew members. I have myself, the chief steward, a chief cook, and a second cook. And we just do it with a lot of love and care and make sure that everybody's happy and well fed. We use up to 150 dozen eggs per trip, up to 100 gallons of milk, a lot of veggies and fruits, a lot of snacks. Everybody's very pleased with what we usually put out. We also make sure that we do it in a loving way, in a sanitary way, in a safe way that keeps everybody from getting any tummy aches.
I'm about to enter the ship's bridge. It's like the Octopod's headquarters.
Octonauts to the HQ.
Ahoy, Captain.
Ahoy, Debbie.
Hi, Eric.
Hello.
Octocadets, meet Eric Johnson, the commander of the ship. Eric, can you tell us about what you do up here?
Absolutely. Hello, Octocadets. My name's Eric Johnson. I'm an Corps officer, and I'm the captain of the Okeanos Explorer. Welcome to my office. This is where we drive the ship. This is where we control the operations. We run the propellers that are underneath us in the back to the wheel up here at the front, which is where we steer. It's a pretty cool job. It's very exciting, and it's pretty beautiful around here as well.
So, Octocadets, now you know a little bit about the ship and how we explore the deep sea. I hope you enjoyed our time together. I'll see you next time.
Debbie, safety first.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the sea ice analysis today, we did have a little bit of ice hanging around St. Lawrence Island. You can see lower concentrations of ice streaming northward in towards the Bering Strait. Otherwise, openings developing through much of the Chukchi Sea and up around Yukiavik there. We also have some openings of lower concentrations of ice in the Beaufort Sea near the Arctic coast. For the marine forecast for southeast, winds variable in the inside waters 10 to 15. Otherwise, outside coast, winds generally from the northwest at 10 to 15, seas as high as 5 feet. And for Saturday, winds generally from the south or southeast in the inside waters 10 to 15. Outside waters, winds generally from the southwest at 10 to 15, seas as high as 5 feet. Friday's forecast for south central Prince William Sound south from the southwest at 10, seas as high as 2 feet. In North Gulf, winds generally from the west at 15, seas as high as 4 feet. Just south of the Seward Peninsula, south of the Kenai Peninsula, winds generally from the east at 15, seas as high as 4 feet. Cook Inlet, winds generally from the east or southeast 10 to 10 with seas as high as 3 feet. And for Saturday, Prince William Sound southwesterly 10 knots, seas as high as 2 feet. North Gulf from the west at 15, seas as high as 4 feet. And the rest of the Gulf region, they're just south of the Kenai Peninsula, seas from the southwest at 15. And Cook Inlet, winds generally from the south at 10 to 15. And for Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, we're going to be looking around Kodiak Island, winds variable 10 to 15, seas as high as 4 feet, just off the coast there, Kodiak. And the south side of the peninsula, winds generally from the southeast at 15, seas as high as 5 feet. North side of the peninsula, winds generally from the southeast 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet. And for Saturday, around Kodiak Island, variable 10 to 15, and south side of the peninsula, winds generally from the east at 15. And north side of the peninsula, winds generally from the northeast at 15, seas as high as 3 feet. Aleutian Chain Friday, winds generally from the south 15, seas as high as 8 feet. A little bit stronger winds out there in the western Aleutians, up to 25, seas as high as 7 feet. And for Saturday, winds in the central and eastern from the, looks like the winds generally from the northwest in the central, 10 to 15. In the east, from the east at 10, seas as high as 5 feet, just south, 5 to 6 feet, just south of Unalaska and Nikolsky. And out there in the western Aleutians, winds generally from the east or northeast at 10 to 15, seas as high as 5 feet. For the west coast, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15, seas as high as 4 feet near St. Matthew and the Pribs. And in Norton Sound, winds generally from the north of 5. And for Saturday, winds generally from the northeast at 10 to 15, seas as high as 4 feet down there near the Pribs. And for Friday, Arctic coast, winds generally from the east up there in the Arctic coast, around 20 knots. And through the Chukchi Sea, winds generally from the southeast at 10 to 15, and through the Bering Strait, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15, seas as high as 3 feet in the open water areas. And for Saturday, along the Arctic coast, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15, seas around 2 feet, and then opening up there, lower concentrations of ice. And through the Chukchi Sea, winds generally from the east at 10 to 15, and down through the Bering Strait, winds generally from the east at 10 to 20 knots there. For tonight's weather, looking at high pressure over the western Aleutians, high pressure in the northern Gulf, and a thermal trough across the interior, 1,001 millibars there. That extends over into Yukon Territory, British Columbia. And then a couple low pressure systems in the northern Pacific there, just south of the Panhandle. And for Monday's weather, scattered afternoon thunderstorms once again across the interior around that thermal trough, thermal low system. And then approaching system from the south there, 1,004 millibar, with a warm front approaching the Alaska Peninsula, scattered rain showers out there, otherwise scattered rain showers in the southern mainland. Also that ridge of high pressure over the Aleutians and in the Gulf.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.